to the Retic rundown, where the giants roam and the legends are found. Uncoil the truth, the wisdom is sound in the Retic rundown. We're breaking new ground. From the jungle's deep to the captive scene, we control the world if you know what I mean. With patterns so bold and sizes extreme, in the Retic rundown, we're breaking new ground. Welcome to the Retic rundown, where the giants roam and the legends are found. Uncoil the truth and let the wisdom resound. In the Retic rundown, we're breaking new ground. Unlocking secrets of the serpentine kings, sharing knowledge, stories, everything it brings. From breeders to keepers, we pull the strings in the Retic rundown. Hear the echo rings. Welcome to the Retic rundown, where the giants roam and the legends are found. Uncoil the truth and let the wisdom resound. In the Retic rundown, we're breaking new ground. Welcome, Retic lovers. Welcome, Retic lovers.
What's happening, everyone? All right, so thank you for joining us on the Retic Rundown. You guys know this is all about delivering high quality information without the unnecessary fluff. And like the new punchline says, it's your Retic resource, no noise, just knowledge. I know I'm not always the best with my language, but I tried to make a punchline that eliminated the bullshit. So no noise, just knowledge. Let me know what y'all think of that. All right. This is your Retic resource. No noise, just knowledge. But, all right. So I'm excited to get into this. Truly, appreciate everybody that's getting in and joining us. All right. So far we got Dickie Foster, Celeste, what's happening? Low Life Exotics. Guys, this is going to be a great episode because we want to bring a lot more information forward about where we're at with doing our Retics legal, right? And we were talking backstage, and all of these guys that are going to talk tonight, they've been there, they've done it in their states, in multiple states, and then on the federal level. And one of the things that we think is there's just not enough information out there about this. And it sucks because people don't know what they don't know, So, but all right, of course, me getting off on a tangent, right? All right, before we jump in, just want to thank you guys. I want to thank Mike backstage, the Herp Collectors Network, of course, for making this possible and having me on. Hey, Jason, what's happening? So good to see you, buddy. A quick reminder too, guys, make sure you guys are supporting USARK Florida. They're doing amazing work to protect our rights, breed reptiles. All of our help is crucial. Even if it's not money, go out there, write your letters, write those senators. Make sure you're doing what you got to do. Okay. So, all right, because this is going to be a lot of information, we're going to get into it and start knocking these out. So first up in the shoot, guys, I want y'all to welcome Steve Kennedy with Steve Sanctuary. What's up, man?
What's up, man? I appreciate you having me on, man.
Absolutely. Well, we talked the other day. You told me about everything that you're doing in Louisiana, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel like, with the lineup of who we have on here, I thought it was great, especially with everything going on in Louisiana recently. Mm-hmm. I know that there's a lot where people are worried about not being able to keep them and stuff. So I feel like 100%, I'm very happy that you volunteered to come on and take the time out. So the floor is yours. Please tell us who you are and it's your shameless plug, man.
Yeah, Stephen Kennedy with Steve Sanctuary. We rescue snakes in homes and businesses. We take in pet reptiles people can't take care of anymore. And we do educational presentations with snakes and reptiles. And our mission statement is to eliminate fear through education and bring peace through rescue. And that's what we do, man. We continue to grow year after year, man.
Awesome. All right. So where can they find you if people want to follow you?
Man, we're all over social media. The easiest thing to do would just be go to our website at snakesuary.com. We've got all of our social media links. You can contact us there by email, and my personal cell phone number is even out there too. So if anybody needs to call or text with any snake issues, they can always get a hold of me. So
you put your personal cell phone out there. How often are you getting blown up?
all the time, man.
All
we
the
had
time.
two right before this podcast.
Two before the show started. We're backstage, and he's like, "If I get a call, we're all like, all right, cool, man. Do what you gotta do."
Yeah.
All right. Hey, well, I very much appreciate you joining us. All right.
Thanks a lot.
So next up, guys, is Aaron Lee Ingalls is no slouch to this. So, buddy, out in Colorado, right?
Yeah, great state of Colorado, mile high, not just the people here. My motto here is, we take great pride in what we do here. So from the day an animal's born till the day it's called to duty, we give it the best life possible. And my flagship item is the rodents. So that's what pays the bills. So the snakes, I can enjoy those thrills. We're Colorado's largest production facility for feeders. I think I have close to 100 rodent racks and about 30,000 rats at any given time in my facility. That's what makes it easy to do what I do. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. We post all the content for you guys to enjoy. We're here for lifetime mentorship and guidance. We don't just sell you an animal, we sell you an experience. Everyone can sell you that animal, but 2 years down the road, are they still going to be there for that animal? And that's one thing I pride myself in.
No, for sure. And then you are always, on the different forums. I see. I don't know if there's not one of the Facebook groups you're not on, and you're always, offering advice. And I see you taking up especially for the new people that are like, they kind of ask that question, and then people are jumping down their throats. And it's like, I see you stand up and be like, no, chill out. Like, let people get into the. So awesome, yeah. Cool. Well, hey man, I know that you've done a lot too out there in Colorado. So, and that's where I was like, with the breakup of who we've got here, I think it's great because it gives us people all over the U.S. And I'm looking forward to hearing like what yours is there. You're in your mile high state, man.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's yeah, for sure. I'll save it for the talks.
Yeah. All right. So the last one. Everybody knows this guy, whether you listen to his music or you've seen him on USARK. So everybody welcome Jeremy Turgeon. Wait a minute. Jeremy, do I say your last name right?
You did. You did.
Did I get it right?
Yeah,
right.
You did. Yeah, man.
All those years in the military of pronouncing every weird and odd name, trying to figure out exactly how it works, So I got it right.
You nailed it.
I meant to ask that backstage. I was like, how to make sure I do this right.
Yeah, man. No, I tell people it's just like surgeon or the fish, the sturgeon. Just drop the S and there you go.
Drop the S. All right, man. Well, not that you need your own shameless plug, but give it to us anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, what's going on? My name is Jeremy Turgeon. I own and operate Brassman Reptiles here in North Carolina. I'll keep it short and sweet. You might recognize me from Nerds social media. I managed New England Reptile for about 3 years before moving down here, and am currently working as the community coordinator for USARK. So you see me all over their social media and stuff now too. And yeah, I'm excited to be here and talk about retics and some of the stuff that goes along with them. That's not always so fun.
Yeah, right. Like it's not always the best, but it's a necessary thing with the government ain't going away, right? That's the reality. Mm-hmm. So and just like how y'all do y'all know Brad McCarthy with Worldwide Reptilia?
No, I haven't heard of that.
All right. Anyway, Brad's he's at like all the shows. I'm surprised, Jeremy. Yeah, I think you would know him. He's always at Tinley. He's got that big one back, the huge table back in the back right corner, the long one. Anyway, doesn't matter.
Oh, okay. No. You know what? I probably have met him and just don't recall the name. I'm so bad with names. So if I saw his face, I'd be like, oh yeah.
Anyway, I was over there. I was talking with him. We were talking about his Eastern Indigos and like how the permit system and stuff works with that. Tell you what, man, that would be another one. I'm like, man, I don't have an Indigo channel, but like that would be a cool one to cover. Might put that as like a a little plus one, you know, like if I can get him on here and some of those other Indigo guys. So, all right, guys, what's up? Todd, sky's the limit is in here, guys. All right, we got Jay Slithers. All right, cool. Goolsby, Adam, what's happening, bud? All right. Well, first, like, we're gonna jump into this. Like I said, you guys know the deal. We got 3 minutes. There's gonna be a countdown there. I will say at the end of your 3 minutes, if you're still trying to wrap up, like, don't feel like you're cut off. Like, finish the thing, and then we'll, move on to your next one. Guys, throughout this that are in the chat, and watching, if you've got a specific question for them at the end, we're gonna have a Q&A. So if it's a specific question, Mike will tag it. We'll get to it after we get through our 4. And then if I'm on a mic, let them go a little freestyle too, if they want to, because there's a lot of information out there. And even though we're doing this that's only 8 questions out of a massive amount of information. So we're going to get started though. All right. So the first question, Steve, you're up first. You ready?
Yep, ready.
Reticulated pythons face a lot of legal scrutiny in different areas. How do you navigate laws and restrictions where you live?
I'll get into some more detail later on, but I always try to do things the right way and legally. I've always gotten my permits through Wildlife and Fisheries, my restricted snake permits. And I also always get my permits through Caddo Parish Animal Control. There's 2 different permits that we have to get here. I'm also a certified master herpetologist, and I'm NACOA certified, which is the National Wildlife Controller Operators Association. And so, like I said, I always try to do things legally and the right way. And so I try to get all my permits, all my certifications. I'm also a member of USARK. That's helped me out a lot. And I think one thing that helps out a lot too is I'm always looking at the local laws and things here, because I deal with the public all the time. We do, numerous presentations every year. And so I'm always keeping up with the laws, because I have people wanting to get these, snakes and other reptiles as pets. And so I have to know those local laws to be able to tell everybody else. Anytime I do presentations and things like that, I'm always informing everybody, educating everybody, and letting more people know about things like USARK and other organizations that can help them out. So just keeping up with my certifications and my permits and everything is one big thing that's helped out a lot.
Okay. So let me ask you this, like, follow up on that. Why do you think retics are so targeted by legislation more than several other species?
I think it's just because of how big they get. That's what I see here. That's one reason that we're here as a rescue, is because people don't understand. They don't realize how big a snake can get. And so they'll call us because it gets too big for them to handle. And then also, like I said, I don't want to get into too much detail right now, because I want to go more into detail later. But I think part of the other reason too is that there's not a lot of education about it, and there's people listen to the misinformation instead of listening to the truth. They don't get all the proper information about it, and so I think it's just a lot of misinformation and a lot of stories. And then you have things that I had to deal with all the time are all the myths. And people see the TV shows and movies all the time, and that just blows everything out of proportion.
Oh yeah. So when you've been working with the, your government, state and local and everything else, like, how have you been able to, like, educate the people that are making the laws, passing the laws, to where they're like, okay, now it's not as bad as I thought it was due to just ignorance?
Oh yeah. I've done that a lot, but like I said, I'll get more into detail later. They kind of didn't listen to me. That's the issue here too. We had a lot of changes here in Louisiana, and they don't listen to the educated people. They're making their changes based on what they hear, who they want to listen to. So it's not the actual experts.
Who they want to listen to. Yeah, that's fair. I would say, like, probably seeing all of the extreme, the videos of the people that we know that provoke them, and now it looks scary, and it's like, no, do you want to see my puppy dog Retic that lays in my lap? Like, this is not the case. All right, Aaron, let's hear it from you, buddy. How reticulated pythons, a lot of scrutiny in different areas, but how do you navigate laws and restrictions where you're at in Colorado?
Well, so in Colorado, we have a couple different agencies that other states don't have to live with. We have what's called the Colorado Department of Agriculture, which was formulated, I believe, back in the 1970s. It was originally founded by some members of PETA with the intentions to bring animal welfare to the inspections, where we actually have random inspections that show up inside of our facility. There's certain thresholds if you have above, just the one snake, that you're going to have to follow these scrutins, the laws and inspections. They're looking at lowering those thresholds in half this year. So that's always the first for us. Anytime I move to a new area or look at taking my business to a new area, because that's where, this is a taxed, licensed company, I always contact the local animal control. I always ask them, hey, I'm going to be moving my animals to your area. What are the laws there? Because ultimately, I don't even want to look past trying to find a place in that area if I can't even do what I do. I started this because I wanted a legal source of income, and right then and there, that's a deal breaker. So and if you're in your house too, you got to think of something like an HOA, even, because they may not even allow animals, and then you just spent all your money getting into this place that you can't even live in legally. There's such a difference between everything on those levels that, I, for one, with rodents, people look at me like, I have rats, I'm breeding them. They're like, what are you going to do? You just got them running around and stuff. They look at me like I'm just, crazy. Those are the things that I always look at: laws first, animal control, and then, obviously I have to comply with PACFA and their caging and everything like that.
Okay. So in Colorado and stuff, and where you're at, or even like, because you sell Retics, obviously are all around. Like, how aware do you think most keepers are about the laws in their area?
Most aren't. I mean, that's the one thing I look at as like a gatekeeper with these animals at expos, is I always ask them, like, where do you guys live? And, most of the time I'm always able to sell in that city where I'm at with the expo. I would never go to an expo that I can't sell legally.
Right.
But that is something where, they're like, oh, I live in Wyoming. And I'm like, well, congrats. I can only sell you these ball pythons here because you can't have reticulated pythons. So I feel like they're really not aware of that.
Do you think, like, well, no, I'm going to hit Jeremy with this one. I'll hit Jeremy with that follow-up question. All right, cool. Like, because I think he can give it on a big level with the USARK side of it. So we'll go with this. All right, so you're going to start, Jeremy, with the initial question, obviously, right? Like, do you need me to repeat it again? You got it.
No, I got it.
All right, cool. Let's go.
Yeah. So for me in North Carolina, we've got a slightly different system. So we can keep reticulated pythons in the state of North Carolina. Statewide, there's no regulation. There are certain criteria. We have to meet certain housing, appropriate housing and all these things. But we have various county regulations that we have to adhere to. So like here in my county, retics are not just retics, but any large constrictor over 8 feet is not allowed in the county. So like, that's right. Exactly.
I hate that.
Yeah. So, if I recall the various local counties correctly, like the next county over to my east, you can have retics with no issue. I might be misquoting that. So, but we're never more than a couple of counties away from being able to do what we want to do.
Yeah.
So that makes trying to navigate the state a bit more challenging with retics. Our big ones, certainly like Mecklenburg County, the Charlotte area, no large constrictors. It's heavily densely populated and all that stuff. So navigating that, like most vendors in the area just don't show up. If the retic vendors in the area won't show up to a Charlotte County show. Right. But what's stopping you from, coming out to Raleigh and getting one in Raleigh, and coming down to the Charlotte area if that's where you live, because the county regs are even more challenging to find than the state regs, which
Right.
makes it kind of a mess to navigate.
Okay, so this was about to be my follow-up question. This is for Aaron, but this one's going to be for you, right? Is because of this, what you just said, right? Like how hard it is. What do you think, like, the chances are, at least like from a state level, of like maybe USARK putting together something that says like, you know, here's what we know, maybe not all the way down in detail, like, but like, boom, here, click on your state, boom, like here it is, you know, like.
So they actually already have that.
Is it already on there?
There
Like,
is
I
already
know you
there.
can go search it, but like I'm saying, like it's not the simplest, or at
So
least it wasn't. Maybe I need to go look at it again.
Yeah, so if
And
you
do
go
my
to
homework.
USARK's website, here I think I can copy it and
I can do it.
and maybe put it in the chat. Bam, I'll throw it in the private chat. But there's a link right there, and you can click on your state. I think it might need to be updated, but it does exist, and that is up to date. I think it's as recent as within the last 2 years.
So within 2 years.
Yeah, so there certainly might be some things that need to be adjusted and tweaked as things change, but it's a solid reference point for people to start.
Right. Okay. So that's what I'm saying. Okay. So like, then what? How do we get this right out there more? We got to get this like pinned in all the groups, like saying, hey, like you guys need to go look at this. All right. Cool.
I didn't even know it existed until now.
Heck yeah, man.
I
Spread the knowledge, man.
But yeah,
well,
I'll say if it's 2 years old, it needs to be updated for Louisiana. I can tell you that already.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yep.
So cool. We've got the start here. Now, how do we push that to like I said, being updated, looking for volunteers. Cool. I like it. All right. That was going to be my big one. And then you gave it to us. So guys, if you don't know, like we'll see if Mike can throw that one up in the chat for you guys. So, all right, Aaron, you're up first on this one, bud. You ready?
Yes, sir.
How do federal, state, and local laws differ? Like, and what have you experienced with that when it comes to reticulated pythons? Like, what has been like each thing? I think we kind of hit on it a little bit there with Jeremy. So I'm curious where you're at with Colorado and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, we all know about the Lacey Act that's hanging over all of our heads. They're always trying to reamend that one. That one's the scariest because it will trump everything. I'll be stuck in a state where I can't even take an animal to a vet across an imaginary line. That's my biggest concern. But I mean, state laws, we don't really have a lot of restrictions when it comes to it. It's the cities that vary so greatly where, in Jeremy's situation, I'm a stone's throw away from not having any animals bigger than 6 feet. It just really upsets me how they have such you can go from one place to another and still be good. But the second you move to a wrong area, it's different. With us, we have PACFA, and PACFA literally is holding meetings to try and control the size of enclosures that we have before needing a bigger enclosure. It's scary, the fact that a person behind a desk can decide the fate of my future when I have fought tooth and nail to get where I'm at today. The state, PACFA, has kind of a blanket regulations. It doesn't make sense because I can, as a hobbyist, have a hog-nosed snake, but the second I do the right thing and get licensed and inspected, I can no longer have hog-nose, which you think that would be in a license to have a hog-nose because they're venomous. It's like, oh, the irresponsible person gets it, but I can't. So it's frustrating when you get into like that kind of situation. And with us, we fall with the Parks and Wildlife. They don't even want corn snakes in our area because it's a native species to that. And that, I believe, the bearded dragons even fall on that linear zone in that of the planet where that they technically shouldn't. So it's hard to sit here and deal with these local laws when it's really got, my pig just got scared. When there's,
You see,
yeah, I have a pet pig. You'll probably hear him. But yeah,
awesome.
it's one of those things where at the end of the day, it's really frustrating because a person behind a desk that has no actual knowledge of the real world situation and how these laws can apply to the current situation. That's my biggest thing is I try to show them these things and point it out, like my own federal heights, Wilbur, come on. The federal heights actually will sit there and called me and was like, are these laws going to be affecting you selling animals in your area? And I'm like, well, hold on, guys. Federal heights doesn't even allow me to sell any of these animals in the first place. Is this like a test? Are you filling it out to see if I actually sell these illegally? So it's really frustrating when, they don't even understand their own laws, and I'm supposed to. I hope
that would be very frustrating, like, because then you're sitting here and you're like, as an honest businessman, like you said, like, I'm trying to do this the right way, it's a tax earning business. So like you come at me with a question like that, it feels like entrapment, like, how do I answer that? And then of course anyone like that, whether it's a cop or it's like a federal officer stuff, or anyone like that, it just feels like entrapment. And then they're like, oh, well, you're not being nice, cooperating, that type thing. And you get that backlash of like, no, I'm just trying to protect myself and my business.
Yeah. I love the animals, but at the end of the day, this is a business and I have to run it as such, or else I'll be working a day job that I hate.
I feel you. Yeah. I want to see Wilbur though before the end of the podcast for sure.
You can see him real quick. Wilbur.
What up, buddy?
Wilbur.
That's awesome. I'm normal. I just have a Rottweiler, so. All right, Jeremy. You're up, man.
He came to me as a rescue in one of the groups.
That's awesome.
That's cool, man. So this situation, of course, Lacey Act, federal regulations were always very concerned about, and we're always paying attention for what might come down the pipeline. This on the state side, deviating from North Carolina. I'm originally from Massachusetts. Massachusetts is outright no retics in the state. None. And to the point where I recall trying to get my permit for them. I had gotten permits for monitors and chameleons, which we needed at the time. And the vice president of Fish and Wildlife at the time called me because they got my application and verbatim told me to pick a different effing species and move on. And I was like, oh, that's cool.
I like it.
Yeah. So take that, and then you go 2 hours north into New Hampshire, you can have retics, no problem. You don't even need permits. You can have a reticulated python. So, a bordering city like Haverhill, Massachusetts, that's literally right on the outskirts of Nerd, like literally 10 minutes from Nerd, that average hobbyist is not going to know that bringing a retic into the state is going to make Fish and Wildlife lose their mind.
Right.
So that is super, super frustrating. When you have laws that vary so greatly between the states, it forces you, if you're living in New Hampshire and have to move to Massachusetts for work or whatever, you can't take your retic. You can't even get a permit, so that's incredibly frustrating. And then, going past that, similarly in Massachusetts, we had certain county regulations and stuff that prohibited size of certain constrictors. Once again, when you're trying to do things the right way, whether you're operating a business or just trying to be a law-abiding hobbyist, working with a species that you enjoy, it's like pulling teeth to find some of these regulations, and you really have to do your due diligence. And you'd be surprised when you start making some phone calls, what the lawmakers and people in those offices don't even know. You know, sometimes you find out like a simple zoning difference means you can or can't keep the animals that you're looking at, you know, and that's, you know, how many different offices do you have to call to find out about zoning in your county? You know, like it really is wild.
It is wild. Okay. So a little bit of a follow-up on this one, right? Because you, like you said, working in there, being in Massachusetts, being a law-abiding, citizen, hobbyist keeper, whatever, or especially if you're selling, how many times have you had to deal with that customer that's like, oh, well, I live over here. What if I get it delivered to right here though, right? And how many did you deal with that before?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, there's no real way to police it all that well, you know, because if so and so from lives in Massachusetts, but it doesn't tell you that information and gives you a New Hampshire address, there's no reason for you to think any differently. Or if you're sending that snake to an address in a state where it is legal for ownership, but they're not there, you know, because maybe they do know the laws and they're trying to be sneaky. You know, it's challenging because as the seller, we want to be proactive in making sure we're not, you know, creating larger issues, but we can only go based off information that we're given, you know. So it really is a fine line and a double-edged sword to be able to do it appropriately on both ends, you know, finding the laws as the hobbyist and the keeper, but then also abiding by those laws when you're selling the animals across the country.
That's one that I dealt with when I was working with ROR a lot. You know, people from especially New York, right? Be right there on. Oh, well, I can go across the bridge to New Jersey. And I'm like, no, you told me. And this was always like my kind of conundrum with it is it's like, one, they need to be educated, but I just educated them how to go to the next seller and get away with it, you know, as well, if they choose to. And that was always like, oh, it kind of hit me, you know, like, not that I never bothered me that we didn't, you know, make that sale. It's that somebody, you know, that if they don't want to, you know, nobody in New York's getting a Retic permit. Nobody.
No one.
And like, I'm gonna get it, and I'm like, no, you're not. And well, then I'm like, I'm not gonna sell you a snake. I can't do it. But I just educated them how to get around the system if they wanted to. All right, sorry about that. Like, see, this is Steve. This is what I was talking about, right? I will tangent, and this is the whole purpose. So, all right, Steve, you're up, buddy. All right.
We're on question 2, right? Is that what we're on?
Yeah. So let me repeat it, that way everybody in the chat knows and stuff too. Like, all right, how do federal, state, and local laws differ when it comes to, you know, reticulated python ownership that you've experienced and dealt with?
Okay. Well, first of all, it's, I guess, comforting to know that it seems like all of us are dealing with the same thing. I didn't know that. I thought Louisiana was completely different. So here you have to have your permit through Wildlife and Fisheries through the state. That covers, it's a restricted snake permit. It covers constrictors over 8 feet and any venomous. And then also, though, each parish, which is like a county in another state, each parish has their own laws. So I'm in Caddo Parish. Caddo Parish kind of doesn't care. As long as you fill out your permit, you know, your application, they're fine with it. But the next parish over in Bossier Parish, they will not allow anything, period. They won't even allow ball pythons. So
who hurt them?
Yeah. Yeah, right. So that's something that's I've had to deal with locally. So you have your state permits, which most people know about, but the parish permits most people do not know about. And the ones that do, this is something I've had to deal with. The ones that do know about it, Jeremy, you kind of touched on it a little bit too, that they don't care. They're just, well, I just won't let them know about it. I'm going to get my animal and I just won't report it. And which can cause more issues, you know, if something happens because of escapees and things like that. But yeah, the people that they either don't know, but if they know, they just don't care and they're just not going to report it. And that goes back to, you know, what was stated before is they're like, well, I'm just going to get it. I'm not going to report it. But it's harder on me. I have to jump through hoops, it seems like, to get my permits every year. But Joe Blow over there, on the other side of the street can keep his as long as he doesn't report it. He can keep whatever. So it causes issues both ways.
Yeah, for sure. So, being where you're at, let me ask you this. Have you ever had to deal with like a very sudden legal change that impacted your ability to keep, your animals? Like, I mean, it was like something hit overnight, or you're like, brought into it, you're fighting it.
Not overnight. Again, I'll talk more in detail in a little bit about it, but we fought for at least a year. It was almost a year and a half with wildlife and fisheries on the laws that they were changing here. So it wasn't an overnight thing. But I'm kind of a special case, I guess, because of the way our insurance, the business insurance has us listed. And then also because I'm a member of NACOA, I'm kind of a special case. And since I honestly don't breed, I don't sell my stuff, but we mainly just do the rescues. And so those laws and changes don't really affect what I do. Wildlife and
Impact
fisheries
you
told
the
me,
same?
yeah. So I'm kind of a special case, I guess. So they said it's all the laws that they changed last year aren't going to affect me. So
Okay. So, Jeremy, real quick, you might be able to give me an answer on this one from like the USARK side. This is like a little bonus one too. But like, we've seen where they've tried to sneak stuff into bills before, where like we would, if we hadn't got to page 88 of 160, we'd have never seen it. Somebody's reading that, right?
Yeah.
And that's what USARK being there, what they do and what they make sure that we're. Have you guys have we seen any that like have happened though, where it's just been like they snuck it in and got away with it and then it screwed us?
So for the most part, no. The trick becomes when it's an amendment that gets thrown in at the last minute that we don't ever have the chance to see, which does happen from time to time. It's not super common, but it will happen from time to time where they're just like, oh yeah, we're just going to slide that, in between pages 84 and 85, and nobody sees it. And then it just gets voted on. And we're like, well, wait, what the heck? When did this happen? And everybody gets blindsided in those moments.
Gotcha. Yeah. So that's definitely what I'm always worried about is like, it's just shady.
Do you think that's something they could slide the Lacey Act amendment into at the last minute, or is that something that would be a little bit more of a pushback?
I think that one's more challenging just because usually something like that is going into this very elaborate piece of legislation.
Heroes Act, the Patriot Act.
Exactly. So there's already a lot of eyes on it, so it's really hard to throw something like that in there last minute.
Okay, I just wanted to ask that.
All right. So number 3, I think we've kind of addressed it in the first 2 answers, right? But Jeremy, you're up. So do you think there is enough being done to educate keepers on legal compliance, or is there a huge gap in knowledge? And then as a bonus, what are your suggestions on fixing it? And I'll give you guys get a little more time, the 2 of you, to add that bonus question in. I'm always throwing curveballs.
So this one's interesting. I think I don't think that there's enough being done to educate the average keeper. Those of us who are invested in the species and care about the species, we're already as proactive as we possibly can be for the most part. So it really comes down to, one, real understanding the laws in your state, in your county, whatever you might be having to deal with, and then 2, really figuring out a way to disseminate that information to your buyers, your local buyers, and finding out ways where you can be sharing information, even if it's like taking the USARK link that I just posted and like putting that in your local Facebook groups, and those kind of things, just to work to be a little bit more proactive, because at the end of the day, the majority of people, when you start talking politics and legal jargon, they glaze over. They don't want to hear it. Can I keep it or can I not keep it? If I can keep it, do I need a permit or no? Like that's all they want to know. Anything past that is like, I don't care. you
Yep.
know. So that's for those of us that are in the know on how to get those things done appropriately. We have to take that little extra time to figure out, okay, well, how can I get you to understand that without boring you to death, and also without making myself frustrated because you're clearly not listening to what I'm trying to say. You know, so
yeah, it's
that
like, it's
really becomes the
important.
trick. Yeah, exactly. And it's another layer of keeping that most people don't think about. You know, you can equate it similarly to something like biosecurity, right? Like as soon as you start talking weird nitty gritty things like that, people just kind of glaze over. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to hear about it, or they just don't care.
Right.
So I think it really does kind of fall on us that do know what's going on to, you know, stand up when, you know, when somebody's trying to be shady and refuse that sale. You know, don't be a part of that problem, number one. And number two, doing your due diligence to make sure that you're educating as many people as possible. If you've got a website or you've got a Morph Market account or something and you're selling there, post it on your ad, you know your laws, go to this link. You know, take the extra time to do that. Something as simple as that you can just copy and paste into every ad that you're posting wherever you're posting it. You know, like if you're copy and pasting, you've got a little thing that you can do and just bing, bang, boom all the way through. You're doing something. You're being proactive to make sure that those things are reduced, at least from your end.
Yeah, no, 100%. I like that. Cool. All right. Steve, you're up, buddy.
All right. I'm kind of going along with
detail yet.
Huh?
Is this where you get into detail?
A little bit. A little bit.
I'm just giving you hell, man.
All right. Yeah. So this answer is going to be a little bit longer, but number 4 is going to be really long.
Okay.
So
I think everybody's here for it. So
yeah. So from what I've seen, there's a very big gap in the knowledge. I think I'm going to look at this 2 different ways. I think most people here in Louisiana anyway, they want to get a snake just because it's cool. They just want to show it off, and they don't do their research into what it takes to actually keep that properly. And they don't, they don't, for me, from the rescue side of it, people don't realize how long it's going to, the snake's going to live. They don't realize how big they will get. And so when it gets inconvenient, that's when they call me and they're like, hey, I can't take care of it anymore. Can you take it in? So the most normal keepers don't have that knowledge. They don't do that research. As far as the permitting system, I don't have any problem with people having to get permits. That's not the issue for me. I do understand there's government overreach, but there's numerous people that shouldn't be keeping these pets. They're just irresponsible pet owners. So I think the permitting system, it actually does. It's supposed to show that you've done your research, that you've actually had training in keeping these, and you know how to keep them properly. But a lot of people, they just don't, like Jeremy was talking about, a lot of people just don't know about the laws. They don't know what's actually legal. And I kind of have a hot take with this one. And hopefully I won't make too many people mad. But I think a lot of reptile owners, especially on social media, the big social media influencers, they just want to show off their animals. And a lot of people, and I've had to deal with this personally, a lot of people just breed just to make the money. They don't really care about anything else. I don't see, from my perspective, I don't see the education from the breeders and the social media influencers to let people know how to properly keep everything. I've got a story. I can tell the story later about, I've had to actually personally deal with that, with people getting these pets from breeders, and they didn't get the education part of it. So I think the breeders and the influencers should educate their customers and the audience on how to keep the animals properly. And then, things about like USARK and the laws in that area on, what's legal to keep. We've had shows come in, the reptile shows and things like that. And people just, honestly, from what I've seen, this is my perspective, a lot of the breeders, the people that are there selling their animals, are just there for the money. They're not there to actually educate people. They don't care about that pet after it leaves their hands. After they've sold it, they don't care. There's no follow-up. And so that's kind of my side of it.
All right, I got a follow-up question for you. Then Aaron, give me just a sec, because you've said you don't have any issues, with permits and stuff like that and licenses protocols, right? Have you found, any that have been passed, and a lot of people don't like that government overreach, right?
Mhm.
Have you found any that you find have actually been helpful in dealing with legal requirements of keeping a species like this, that where it doesn't feel like it was made to just be fully restricted, but it was actually helpful?
Before all of the changes this last year, yes, the application for the restricted snake permit through the state, you had to put not you had to, I don't want to say it was specifically references, but you had to, I want to say that there was, when I filled it out, that was several years ago, you had to put a reference on there, but they had to know, you had to put on there how many years how many years you were studying this reptile, how many who you studied under. They needed that proof that you actually did research, that you did your study, that you have that education before they would issue that permit. Now, like I said, last year everything completely changed.
Right.
But the old state herpetologist actually looked at that before he issued his permit, and so that's where I came from.
Yeah.
So
So
that's where when I say I don't have a problem with the permitting system, that's what I mean. So if you're having to fill out a permit, an application to get a permit through the state or through wherever you live, if you show that you've done your research and you have that education before you get that animal, that's what I don't have a problem with.
yeah.
Now, like last year, everything completely changed. I'll get into more detail later about that. So currently, the way that the state's doing things now, yeah, I've got issues with the way they issue permits
Right.
now. But I'm talking
Yeah.
about proving that you've actually done that you've got that education. That's what I mean. So when
That
you
makes
say,
a big
"Hey,
difference.
I've got this education, I've done these studies, this is the person I studied under, whatever, however many years you've been doing it," to prove that you can keep that animal responsibly. That's what I don't have a problem with.
There you go. All right, cool. All right, Aaron, do you think enough's being done to educate keepers on legal compliance where you're at, or is there, what's your gap in knowledge there?
So, I mean, I do a lot of shows. I do about 30 plus shows last year. I can't even tell you how many. I just know I did 70,000 miles on my car between deliveries and expos. I don't think there's enough out there. That's one thing I pride myself in, is when I'm at an expo and I'm selling a retic, I usually have a 10-foot snake on the table. And that's the animal I talk to and I point at and say, you realize this animal's not even full grown right here, and this is something you're going to be dealing with. Is that something you're even comfortable around? The legal aspect, again, it goes back to, I hear people saying I live here, and I'm like, well, I can't even sell to you anymore. I won't be on the highlight reel, and neither will any of my animals, because at the end of the day, I am a gatekeeper. I get told at expos I'm better at not selling the animal than I am at selling the animal. And my simple responses to that is, yes, my job is not to make a sale, but to make sure that I find this animal a proper home. I'm sure as much as Steve loves working with the big snakes, to get 15 of them dropped in his lap from 12 irresponsible people, that's not something that I want to have burdened the industry. So that's why I take pride in that lifetime care. I even do video conference calls where people will call me and say, hey, how do I pull the snake out of the cage? And I say, hey, let me show you right here how to pull this snake out. And just showing them, they're like, man, you're crazy. I'm like, yeah, it's 10% crazy, 90% confidence just going in. And I've kept people to keep these animals because I put in the work with the customer. My job is to have an experience for them, not just to sell them an animal. So, I mean, that's the one thing I'm big on. And, if you're in this, trying to get into this and you're unsure, there's so many Facebook groups out there now where you can sit there and reach out to the local, Colorado reptile community group, say, hey, I'm getting a retic, what's the laws? And people are going to say, not here, over there, where you can do that. And even finding a local mentor that's been around forever that can help you navigate those kind of laws, I feel like is critical. Shout out to Travis Warren. He's not in my area, but man, he's been a wealth of knowledge to me as a friend and as a business associate. So Having people that can guide the light or show you the light and guide you along the way is critical to longevity. You know, anytime there's a new person in this industry, I don't ever yell at them. I always, you know, I'll private message people because that goes further than trying to publicly even ask a question, because it shows you're just there for them and the animal. You know, I feel like we could all do better, especially at shows. You know, I always say, if this is your first animal, stick with the ball python, corn snake. Even if it means I lose a sale, I will be able to come back and make sales in the future, but I won't if that irresponsible person buys the animal, releases it. Their nightmare is over, but mine just began with those new laws. Look at the Hots and with that Jeff guy, you know, because of him, South Carolina, I think it was, just had rules possibly being proposed. You know, we love these animals so much that we have to do our part to protect them, even if it means we leave a show losing money.
I feel you. All right. So the one thing I want to add to this before we get to the next question is Jeremy brought up a really good point that there's a gap in knowledge, but it is because people just glaze over, right? So me sitting around and, you know, doing some research and stuff, guys, AI, all right, stuff, you know, it's here and it ain't going away. So you might as well utilize it to your advantage. One of the things I found out watching some videos trying to improve about with Chat GTP and stuff like that is if you take a law or legal jargon, whatever, you can ask it to simplify it into like normal terms, right? To where it's readable. And then, yeah, like even with that, is it going to be 100% perfect? Probably not, but it's going to put it at least into a style of writing that you can sit there and read and it not be like, I can't get through this. And then you can base then you know where to, like, all right, if I'm reading this seems weird. Here's the actual legal redaction of what it is, which is even weirder. All right. So it's kind of getting to a point where there's not going to be an excuse of like, I'm going to glaze over because I just don't understand legal jargon. Now it's literally at your fingertips. You're able to just copy, paste it in and say, hey, make this, you know, readable to your average person. And it will help you out. And if you take the time then, right, to sit down and go through, read that, and something stands out that's weird, at least there, you know, it gives you a better starting point. And I really wanted to bring that point up to say, hey, you know, like there's an easier way to go about it. To help yourself out and not have to rely on, you know, USARK to break it down, you know, like I used to say in the Army, right? I'm gonna break it down Barney style for you. And then or like my drill sergeant used to tell me, he's gonna give us the big lips, right? Like, you got it? Like I love that. Love that guy. There's so many push-ups. I pushed Fort Leonard Wood away from me and many, many, many times. But it's there, guys. I just want to drop that little knowledge bomb on you. And I'm sure it's not just Chat GTP. It's probably every one of any of those AIs. It's there. So if you got a question or if you're starting to read it and you're like, bam, I don't get this, try dropping it in there, see if it helps you out. Or if not, guys, there's this wealth of knowledge right here in the room that's probably, you know, got plenty of experience reading it that could help you out. So, all right, sorry, I'm on. That's my rabbit hole for that question. But I just thought that was really cool when I seen that the other day, tested it out, and it really does work. So don't let just your ignorance of how legal jargon works hold you back from knowledge. All right, so Steve, you're back up for number one, man. I know this is gonna be your long one, so
all right. I'll try to get through it.
We'll see what you got. But, all right, so here's the question, everybody. Do you think that these laws are based more on public safety concerns, misinformation, or political pressure? 3 minutes, buddy.
All right, man.
3 minutes or more.
Let's get to it. All right. So Louisiana just fought with Wildlife and Fisheries for just over a year. It was almost a year and a half with their changes to the laws. We just recently got a new state herpetologist. And the new state herpetologist was listening to other lawmakers in other states, and that's where this person was getting their information from. There weren't any actual studies done in our area specifically. All the information was getting sent from other states, especially
Mhm.
like Florida, and that was a big
Oh,
problem. I went down to
yeah.
Baton Rouge last year at least 4 times. I think it was more like 5 or 6 times, and that's a 4-hour drive one way for me, to talk to wildlife and fisheries. Um, I sent numerous emails to wildlife and fisheries, Congress, and the Senate, um, because that's something else I wanted to mention a little bit later. I got letters from different fire departments, animal control, and the police departments, and the sheriff's office to show how much of an asset I was to the community. I told Wildlife and Fisheries in detail all of the safety measures that I have set up in place, how I teach safety in all of my presentations. I told them how I educate thousands of people every year. Last year, it was close to 10,000 people that we got to educate about snakes and reptiles. But they seemed more swayed by the perceived danger, because of isolated incidents in other areas. So that, like I said, there were no specific studies done in our area, and they didn't listen to the experts here in this area.
Mhm.
Um, most of the public still has that ingrained fear of snakes. It's something I have to deal with every time I do my educational presentations. Then you have the media that fuels that fire by over centralizing certain stories or blowing things out of proportion. Most of the public gets freaked out by isolated incidents that they hear on the news, and they think that that same thing can happen here. And then when it comes time to vote on those issues, or if the public has an opportunity to do something about that issue, they listen to those fears and that misinformation rather than the experts. I think there needs to be a lot more education to the public about snakes and reptiles. I think reptile owners need to be more willing to give out the correct information about snakes to the public. They need to speak up more. They need to do more outreach. And I think they need to show the public and the politicians, even the good side and the positive side, more about keeping reptiles. I don't see, from my perspective, I don't see the action from the big reptile keepers and the people that do this. I don't see that education side of it, that I think needs to be there.
No, I agree. Those great points, man. And you did it in 3 minutes. So
Ah, nice.
I was like, I was ready. I was gonna be like, all right, just keep it rolling, man. This sounds great. But I'm liking it. Yeah. No, so I will. That's one of the things that, and I think it's amazing to me how with just a little bit of education, and when you can find something that clicks with that person, how much all of a sudden it changes. So like here in PA, like was it 2 years ago? The curly hair keeper is a friend of mine, Abby Stone, and then her husband Jody, and we were doing some local stuff, and we've done a few where we have the snakes out at events and stuff, and people like, oh, they'll shy away, and then by the end of it, we were coming out like, because the event was once a month, and we were out all year. And we had people that were literally just coming back to just see us and hang out with us, and hang out with the snakes. And so, like, for me, the one thing that I've kind of always found works to break that barrier is I tell everybody, I was like, all right, from a young age, you were taught, dogs are common, right? So I was like, you're not going to walk up to a dog because that's got its head down, its hair standing up. We were taught to read body language. I'm like, let me show you, from whatever distance you're comfortable at, let me show you a snake's body language and how it looks the same and relates. And then all of a sudden, in that instance, people go from, I'm like, don't pick up a wild snake. I'm like, the reason that they act like that is because you're this big looming predator, but like, they don't know. But these that are raised in captivity and stuff, I'm like, humans are part of their everyday life. I was like, it's different. And you'll see it just melt. Like, and it's like, okay, if we could just do an overall, just awesome click of like, let me get this in your brain, and see, because I think they're amazing pets. But all right, Aaron, what you got, man?
So I mean, I'm torn between all three of them. I think a lot of it is misconception and misinformation. When I've attended these meetings, we have board meetings with stakeholders that are licensed by the state of Colorado with PACFA. You see PETA in these meetings, and they just bring to the table such a presence in these places that the word's taken almost as gospel. Shout out to Phil Goss, though. I mean, he was just at these last couple meetings, and he was educating these people and just talking. They don't understand that how much we love this animal. They just understand that they've seen a cat or a dog get snatched up by these animals, and that's what scares them. Letting them know, like, hey, we're 2,000 miles almost away from the linear line on the demographic map of where these animals, such as reticulated pythons, are kept and, live in the wild. So being in a colder climate, especially dry, 40-30% humidity, these animals won't thrive. Now you go up to Wyoming, and I actually spoke with the biologist up there. She said, I understand that we are that far away from where these animals naturally occur, but we don't want to continue the breeding help breed a species that is so evasive. My biggest thing, though, is they are so one-sided. They don't talk about the red algae being destroyed on the beachfront properties in Florida. They don't talk about the diversion of water from the Everglades that they're so worried about, that is drying out because of farmers. It's such a political skew because their cat or dog will be eaten by these animals that they don't want them there. But they don't care about the guppies. They don't care about the animals that are in those Everglades that need that water. It's such they need a blanket protection if they're going to talk about ecosystems and trying to protect them. It's just frustrating when you get into those situations where, at the end of the day, yes, these animals will forever impact them, but human beings have forever impacted ecosystems since the dawn of time. We used to drop animals off into islands and had them there for food sources in future times. Deer Island is one of them. They're just overpopulating because there's no predators. Right. It's very frustrating when you get into the thick of it, and how yes, it's from all angles. They got PETA in there pushing money through the lobby. They got, these scare tactics of talking about dogs and cats being eaten. But they don't talk about the little girl that was forever changed and decided to start wildlife recovery because she's seen a snake when she was a kid. So that's my biggest thing is, at the end of the day, we have to do our part to show these animals. I always say I've been chased by a Chihuahua more than I've been chased by a reticulated python. And that gets people laughing every time because it's the bottom line. I was like, if this animal is a threat, just step aside, take 10 feet off to the direction it's heading, and you're probably out of its line of travel. Unless it's a water moccasin or something, those things are evil.
Yeah, right. Chase you and gonna eat your big toe. We know.
That's my opinion on it.
Oh man, the water moccasin one. I know we were talking about it backstage. It gets me. I love it because living in Pennsylvania, they're not here. But I will tell you.
Yes, they are.
You know how many stories I get? It was a water moccasin. I said, I promise you it's not. I promise you it's not.
Yeah.
But oh man, it is one of them things, boy. Ugh. All right, great points, man. All right, Jeremy, what's your thoughts?
All right, I'm going to try to keep it short because this is one that's pretty involved for me as well. I agree. I think it's almost equal on all fronts here. Certainly, political pressure from lobbyists. If you're a public figure, you've got to run campaigns. If you've got organizations that are funding a campaign, they're going to expect a little something in return. And we see that. We see that when we figure out, like, you talk to some of the bill sponsors and they don't even know what the heck is on the bill. They don't even fully understand the language. So it means they didn't write it. Somebody else had their hand in that pot. First and foremost. Public safety is certainly another one, and I think is potentially the most valid if we're going to put something into quotes. You know, when we think about, especially in the Southeast, invasive potential, you know, it is a wonderful phrase that gets thrown around all the time. I think we've all certainly seen, you know, images or videos of like berms in the glades, and like certainly those animals act very differently than the berms we keep in captivity. You know, so for the average person who might come up to one, you know, there's a freak out moment, or, you know, the dog, you know, becomes this terrible news story, whatever. So I can understand the public safety thing, but it gets used as a fear tactic more so than like okay, well, how can we educate the public to be safe in those situations? You know, and right. I think that's where the difference is. And then I want to make sure I hit on all of them. And then misinformation was the other one. I mean, It's huge, man. We see it on the news all the time. Big giant monster python, blah blah. These demons, you know. I mean, we all saw the Animal Planet shift after Steve Irwin died, right? Like all the programming became this insane fear mongering, blah blah blah. I want to jump back to like the public pressure as well from misinformation. So this doesn't necessarily have to do with retics, but can be paralleled. In Massachusetts, there was an attempt to repopulate the timber rattlesnake, which is an endangered species in the state of Massachusetts. They were going to use an isolated island in the Quabbin River, or the Quabbin Reservoir, excuse me, to try to establish a population that would literally or eventually end up in places where dens were already existing. That made the news, and people lost their minds. And it was, well, they're going to swim to shore, and they're going to do this, and what they're going to drink the water, and the venom from their fangs will leak into the water and poison the water system. You're laughing, but these were real concerns. And I remember I was doing a city event with the music school that I worked at. And the person next to me in the next booth was Senator Eric Lesser, who was spearheading that campaign and making sure that there was funding going and all this stuff. And I was like, hey, Eric, we got to talk. You know, like, let's talk about this. And he was like, well, you seem to be very well read in this information. I was like, have you ever seen a timber rattlesnake? Let me take you to New England Reptile. Of course, he didn't take that invitation. But, you know, it was when I talked to him, I was like, you know, there's funding in Mass Fish and Wildlife for stuff like this. Why is that funding being removed?
Right.
What's going on? And the response was, well, we got so many calls and so many emails about people freaking out about this possibility. It's literally the opposite of what happens when we call on behalf of USARK to stop a piece of legislation. If you get people amped up enough to get it passed, that will happen. So when you exist in that space of misinformation and fear mongering, you'll get people that amped up to make those calls based on the emotional response and lack of knowledge on what's actually going on. And that also has to do with, and this will be the last thing, otherwise I'll go on for forever. It also goes into how we digest media, whether it be social media or the news or whatever. If you go and look at the headlines for any story you Google them, and you look at all the different news outlets, they are all trying to catch you with that headline. And each one will be vastly different, but vastly insane to make you be like, what the heck is going on? It's the same thing across the board. And it's really easy to do that with snakes, because snakes are the boogeyman, especially giant snakes like retics.
Oh yeah, like 100%. You'll see it.
Yeah. Oh, I had one more thing to add. Sorry.
All right.
Because of the point about different agencies talking to each other or referencing other states for laws. 100% that happens all across the country. Speaking at a hearing in Maine before they passed all their crazy regulations, and they were literally citing regulations in Florida because, you know, they're certainly neighboring states. So, you know, but lastly, there's, and this is my shortened version of a Kevin McCurley rampage. There is an organization called the Southeast Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies. And
Okay.
it is literally an association of various state agencies, fish and wildlife agencies, and they have members from each of their organizations on their boards and committees. So when we talk about these people talking to each other and amongst each other, and people look at us like we're crazy, it's a real thing. You can look it up. It's literally the Southeastern
good old boy
Association of
stuff.
Fish and Wildlife Agencies. It's chaotic. So when we talk about like, no, that's why this happened here and then moved up to the next one and moved up to the next one and went across to the next one. It literally happens.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's literally why Florida like has its own separation from the other 49 states when it comes to USARK, right? Because of like that happening. And I mean, I know we've heard it, I've heard it a ton. It's like whatever Florida starts, everybody else has got to start looking at, you know, and stuff, because they get the ball rolling on anything, and which I just find incredibly insane.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's like Steve brought up earlier, or, you know, you brought up, where it's like Aaron brought up, sorry, that it's like we're 2,000 miles. Like, I get that Florida, you know, yeah, they can obviously thrive there, and I'm 100% for removing them, you know, from the wild, you know, because they're not going to be there. They're not sure, they shouldn't be there, and I'm okay with that. As far as that side of it goes, but if you're like in a state like Maine, where it's like, even if you know it got
I'm sorry if that gets too loud, guys. I can mute my mic. He's tearing up paper. I don't know if you can hear it or not.
So yeah, I love it. Like, he's cool. But I know I went through kind of like an issue. I lived in Maryland. It's when I first started keeping retics, and I had this park that I would go to, and I never wanted to be. I would take the snakes out because I didn't have a yard in my place, and so I would take them up to the park, and I'm always away from everybody. I was up on this hill, like no one around, especially not near any kind of children that are, you know, with the swing, stuff like that, right? But there was like some summer camp or something, and the pavilion was down the hill where all these kids see these big snakes, and I have my son there, and of course, you know, he's like, I'll just grab it, and so he comes running up the hill, and it was like an 8-foot Motley GC, and he was going down the hill, and I just told Logan, I was like, hey, grab him. Logan just scoops him up. He's like 7 years old, right? Scoops him up in the middle and just throws him over his shoulder and starts running him up the hill. Of course, all these kids are like losing their minds.
Right.
I think it's a great education moment. The lady that was running it cussed me out, called park security, and park security comes over, is like, you got to leave, and I'm like, why? And they're like, well, you're causing a disturbance. And I'm like, I'm not causing anything. And I was like, and pets are allowed here, because I knew the rules. So it ended up like a couple of kids come over. They were enamored with it. You know, my son's like having a blast with it, but he's like, all right, I'm hungry. I'm like, otherwise I would not have left. I'd stood my ground, you know, but he was hungry. And so 7-year-old Logan trumps everything. We get him back to the house. They had taken my license plate. The cops showed up to my apartment as we come down the stairs. And of course, 7-year-old Logan, Dad's got 25 retics upstairs. You want to go see? I'm like, all right, here we go. But so then it ended up like there was a little local Facebook page for Cumberland, Maryland, that had some old dude that listened to the police radio and would post stuff, right? Makes this big post that up in the neighborhood, I had released 10 giant snakes in there, you know, like, I was like, oh my gosh. So my friends, like, they started messaging me, is this you? And because they all know. I'm like, yeah. So I go on the page and I messaged the guy directly. I was like, hey, I'm the guy that, you know, was on the police scanner. I see all the comments and people are worried. I said, I want to stop this fear. I was like, so can I make this right with you? It's your post, right? I'm not trying to come on and do it in a dick way. And he was like, I only report what the police scanner tells me. And I'm like, yeah, but you're causing fear and everything in the neighborhood. And I was like, And that's not the case. And he's like, don't care. All right, cool. Screenshotted that, put that right in there. And I said, hey, just so everybody knows, I tried to make this right with him, right? But here's the deal. Like, I own all these. I was like, I guarantee you, majority of them cost more than any of your pets because they're ridiculously expensive, that I got to get into breeding. And I was like, these are my pets. I'm not going to release them, nor would they survive here. And then all of a sudden, everybody like calms down, right? And it was fine.
Yep.
But it's the fear mongering like that too, where it's like, even when you try to set it right, you know, like you're not even allowed to unless you go about it in a jerk off way, that I've found. But so, all right, well, guys, like we're at what, an hour and 15. As I promised, we didn't get any questions, but do any of the three of y'all have anything else you want to add for this episode? Any alibis?
I'm saving my stuff.
They're like, there's so much. Let's go.
I did want to ask about the because you guys, we were talking about the Lacey Act, and I saw something I have not seen maybe one or two other people talking about. And from what I read, it was different from the Lacey Act. I think it's HB 531 that the House was trying to pass. I think it was Senator McCollum or something like that. Some lady was trying to pass. I think it's HB 531. And I've only seen like one or two other people talking about that. It's kind of the same, along the same lines as the Lacey Act, but I think it's separate. And so have you guys looked into that? What's the whole deal about that? Because I sent messages to all of my senators and congressmen here in the state about it, made phone calls to them all.
What was that House bill number again?
531, I think.
That's a new one.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard.
Yeah, it was proposed. It was proposed sometime last year. It was about the same time that all of the Louisiana wildlife and fishery stuff was going into effect. Yeah, I think USARK had posted. They made one little post about it on their site, and that's how I found out about it. And I think I've seen maybe one or two other people talking about it. That's it.
I'm wondering if it was tabled or went to an initial committee and was never heard. I'm not 100% sure on that though.
Okay.
I feel like a lot of stuff like against the laws for us, because of the, don't want to get political, but an election year tends to really get tabled. Prior to last year, the Lacey Act was tried to get piggybacked on 3 different bills. That last year was the first year in a row that we haven't had to sit there and send messages out to the people saying do not support the amendment of the Lacey Act. It may be represented, but who knows? I vaguely remember hearing about it, but not enough to like touch.
Did we lose him?
No, I'm still here. I'm just dealing with the pig. I don't know how loud the noise is, but I'm literally right in his rubble pile. He has like a pile of bedding and stuff. I don't live in North.
I'm gonna make a national motion to say we need to change it from a happier than a pig in shit to happier than a pig with paper. So
yeah, no, they're really clean. I've never had him have an accident in the house or anything. It's really shocking.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool,
man. Apparently, I need a pig and not a dog.
Yeah,
right. At the end of the day, that's the one thing I love about what I do. I get to literally wake up every morning and choose to stand where I stand. I don't have to go to work if I don't want to. I get to do what I love and call it a career. And people say, oh, I would never support a big chain person like you, but the reality is I'm no different than anyone else. I just didn't settle for just doing it as a hobby. I found a way to pay my bills with the rodents, and they feed my animals. I never have to worry about that bill. So it's an amazing experience. And that's the scariest thing about this whole talk is literally within the blink of an eye, someone behind the desk can say, no, you can't keep these animals anymore. And that's the scary part about it. And I just thank you, Joe, so much for, using your platform as a voice. And I hope that the next talk and this talk inspires people to show them that an average person who dropped out of high school can make an impact. Why can't I? So
Yeah,
thank you guys.
No, 100%. Like,
Yeah.
Trust me, you guys were all very much selected for your experience, your expertise. And as much as I would love like for this to be an evergreen episode, I think what's going to have to happen is this is going to have to happen like once a year where we bring, and talk about the laws, stuff like that, to make sure that it's staying relevant and like what are our new tips and tricks and what has changed. I was sitting here going through that and I was like, because, everybody loves something that's, always works and is always going to get views. But like Steve mentioned for the USARK website, if it's hadn't been updated in 2 years, it's out of date, for us at least.
Right.
So now I'm looking at this like, okay, this is something that maybe April is going to be the month for the Retic rundown where we're like talking about, anything like this where it's coming with laws and everything for sure. So guys, you know what, everybody, thank you all for joining us. Like I said, it's going to be a two-parter because this is just scratching the surface, but I hope everyone that tuned in and listened to it or anyone that's going to listen to it later, that you guys, got some good stuff in it and ideas on where to start. I think that was the biggest key with the way that we did this question. This first set of questions was to give you guys a starting point, where to look and everything with your laws, and let them give you an experience, and say, okay, this is where I need to go look, right? I know every state, every county, it's different, and it's not going to be easy. You guys, we listen to how much they've struggled just to find the laws within their own counties. And I think that's a major thing for us to understand, and why I wanted to bring it to the attention. So like I said, we're going to have all three of you back on the 15th and to do a follow-up. And let's give you guys that are listening, we'll go over the questions that they're going to answer this next time too. So the number one is going to be, and we know this to be true because we just listened to it, but we're going to get their experience. Have you been involved in efforts to fight legislation that targeted retics? We know they have, but I want to dig into their experience, right, on the next one. Give you guys, that firsthand, and push that. All right. Second question is going to be, do you think the legal landscape for retics will improve, stay the same, or get worse in the coming years? I mean, I know you hear it all over Facebook and stuff like that, like that everybody's like, oh, we're not going to be able to keep these in 10 years. And I think you're right. If you're not going to go out and put in the effort like these gentlemen are, and others, all of course, cross nation. But if you keep these, then and you want to keep these animals, or honestly any exotic pet, it isn't limited just to retics. If you want to keep snakes, if you want to keep lizards, you have to go out and do your part. Be the voice. If you sit back and say, someone else is going to do it, right, then yeah, you're not going to be able to keep these pets, because it takes more than just the handful of people that are doing it, such as Steve, Jeremy, Aaron, Phil Goss, stuff like that. So, and I know there's a lot of you guys out there that are, but there's a lot, like I said, that's not educated. So educate yourself. And then, like I said, Phil makes it super easy. He just asks you to go copy and paste this email, right? If nothing else, if you're doing that, and answering that call, right, that's your call to action, okay? And then I told y'all, go paste the bill into some kind of a chat GTP or AI and tell them to dumb it down for you Barney style, so you can understand what it is. Because these animals, if we don't fight for them, they ain't fighting for themselves. So, and there's a lot more people against them than for them.
I have a
How
really good
important-
saying that I would like to say. You know, there's a
go
motto
ahead.
I made: if I will stand and speak for those who have no voice, or I will stand for those who have no legs, and I will speak for those who don't have a voice. Because ultimately, if we don't get out there outside of these expo walls, talking to people, educating them, showing them the truth that they aren't slimy as they touch them, you know, there's only going to be further repercussions. It's better to reach out to a senator before they have 50 people calling and saying, hey man, I just want you to know I run a business that depends upon these laws never happening. And that's going to be the best proactive solution. So I'll save a lot of that for the next one. I'm really excited about it. Again, Joe, thank you for your service. I really appreciate that too.
Oh, my pleasure, man. My pleasure. It was a blast. I enjoyed it. So I miss it some days, but it's like the damage I got from it, like, you know, the fact I can only lift this left arm like this high, right? Like, it's like, I'm like, oh yeah, that's why I don't do it anymore.
It's the new normal.
All right. So your third question is going to be next in 2 weeks, right? How important is responsible ownership in shaping how lawmakers and the public perceive reticulated pythons? I know we hit on it, but this is where I want to, like, while we hit on it here, I want to get into the nitty gritty of that, because I really want to impress upon you all as keepers how important it is that you are doing the stuff like what Steve was talking about in his state, where it's like, go get your permit. Don't be that guy, because that guy, right, is going to be the one that's going to cause, you know, all the issues and stuff. So, and then the one that I really want to hit on too, this is going to be a good one, is how do legal restrictions impact things like interstate transportation, selling retics, and attending expos? So, you know, I think that those 4 questions are going to be, they're going to dig a little bit deeper, and we're going to keep it going, and I'm excited for it. Hope y'all show up again, and I hope you guys had a good time, learned something. It's been our pleasure here, and we will see you guys in 2 weeks.